Hello and welcome to this week's Loose Links. We've got a very special show this evening as we have 3 new panellists with us this evening. We start to talk about a band that might be coming into your hometown beginning of next year. We also have a guest on the show who he's the face behind the titles. But we question him a little bit more on a project that he's doing. Also, we talk about a war memorial and how it's affected a town and people. So sit back and enjoy the show. Roll titles. Good evening and welcome to Loose Linc. Joining me on the panel this evening is Chris Clark.
Hi.
Eva. And Mike Kelly. And keeping them all in line is me, Nicholas James. All that and a lot more on this week's Loose Links. Good evening, panel. This is so weird.
Good evening.
I've not had three new people on ever.
Have you noticed? I think this is the first time as well. Beards all round.
Yeah.
Beards,
I feel like doing an international men's show, but just a little bit late.
Fairness, the beards will only help increase your viewership, so it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Just a bit of an introduction to these new people. Leon Fever founders on Thursday's Thoughts and decided to step forward and have his say. He's very talkative, so this could be an interesting show. Also, the man behind the voice of the podcast is who you are looking at this evening, is Mike Kelly. He's part of the podcast, so if you've heard him but not seen him, this is him on his first show. And also, we haven't had this introduction yet. This man has been thrown in as a guest panellist, but he is the face behind the credits. So please give it up for Chris Clark. So, good evening, panel. We've got quite a bit to talk about this evening. So we're going to start by talking again. I'm really sorry we don't have the polls. This is getting ridiculous now. I will make sure next week that the polls are up and we'll catch up 3 weeks running. But good evening, Lincoln, as we talk about Lincoln this evening, as Scouting for Skills have a nationwide tour next year, hitting Lincoln on the 11th of November at the Engine Shed, bringing such songs as This Ain't a Love Song, This Is Goodbye, and She's So Lovely. But this got us thinking, so panel, does this give you hope about COVID moving forward, or do you think we are holding on to anything in hope to take us out of COVID?
I think it's important that we feel like we're moving forward. I think having nothing to look forward to stagnates us. And like you say, it's not until November, but I think it's important to look forward to those things now rather than waiting and seeing what happens further down the line.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually. The fact that as you know, I'm also a performer, and I keep having my shows rescheduled, but that's quite nice to know that people are still on it, if you like. They're looking at it as a realistic future, which, you know, it does keep you going.
Do you know what, as well? It's not even just for people to look forward to, is it? It's the entertainment industry as a whole, I think. Because it's giving you, you know, the impression that, because obviously me and Mike are from a background of doing a little bit of theatre and that, and it gives you the impression that there could still be a real future for performing artists, where at the moment it's very bleak, isn't it?
Very, yeah.
I mean, I've got tickets for Ozzy Osbourne that have been postponed twice already. But you have to keep.
But that is Ozzy Osbourne, Leon, to be
honest.
honest.
Pardon? Don't slate. I know he's about dead, but still he's Ozzy Osbourne. So we're not proud of him. But it does. I agree with you guys. It gives you something to look forward to, doesn't it? Because what we've got happening at the moment, nothing.
No, and that's it.
Are we moving forward in the entertainment industry? Maybe I've got it wrong, but I've heard on news that some people are being given permission, depending here, for maybe a Christmas pantomime. That's coming back, but it's depending what tier you're in to if it and they've also said on the news that they could rehearse for this pantomime, bubble up all of that, and then if they suddenly go into tier 3, the pantomime's cancelled. So do you think realistically that it would be safer just to not do them this year?
That's a difficult question, actually, isn't it? I do know somebody who's in pantomime this year, and it's still going ahead so far. I think they are due to open in a few days. But of course, they can only really do it in the theatres that are large enough to have the socially distanced seating, but also the theatres who've probably got a little bit of money behind them to keep going through difficult times. And I think that's actually more of the problem than the safety aspect, is the fact that they can't afford to do it.
Yeah, I know up until they announced the tier system this last week, there was a show going on at the top of Lincoln, or a series of shows, West End Stars from Lincoln, and they've had to drop everything going into tier 3, which was a shame because they'd gone through all the rigorous procedure of regular tests of COVID, making sure that they didn't leave confined bubbles in order to progress with rehearsals. And it's a shame, really, because what they put out looked like it was coming together really well. And to say that all these stars had come together in this time back to their place of birth to put on the shows was amazing.
This is one of the key with the tier system, isn't it, of course, because you've got people like that who are putting in rehearsal time. There's money being spent on these shows, and then all of a sudden they're getting killed. So it's more money being ploughed into things that aren't happening, which is awful for the arts.
This is it's one of the industries that's really being hit hard the most. Definitely. That, along with the hospitality industry as well.
Sorry, Leon. Do you think it's safe though? Do you think people are really going to follow the rules? So say, like, I don't know, I'm in Lincoln. Right, and say like we hit tier 2 and a pantomime goes on. Are you 100% sure that everybody that sits in the audience is from Lincoln?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. And it's a massive risk to say that, we'll put on this show, we've gone through all of this, and then to bring in an audience that's seated so many meters apart, wearing masks and whatnot, because you're still going to interact with other people in like foyers and stuff like that, or when you go and get refreshments. So there is that risk there. But at the same time, there's a lot of companies out there that need that income after a year of having to cancel a series of shows, people coming in and having to refund that money for tickets being purchased.
And the safety aspect as well can be questioned for pretty much across the board, gyms, hospitality businesses, other businesses, other areas entirely. And it is about getting the right balance between safety and economy. But the arts seems to be overlooked more than any other industry, I think, for some reason.
Yeah, it is. I think it's always been one of those more overlooked industries than anything else.
Well, Leon, what was you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, so, because I don't know the answer to it. If you're in tier 3, are the cinemas closed as well?
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Cinemas are closed as well, right? That's okay. Because previously, I know things have changed, but a lot of the rules haven't made sense to me personally.
No, they don't.
No, so like when they did the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, and being a student myself, it baffled me that students got the blame for the second spike just after they said, everybody go to restaurants and get food and sit with each other for a good hour and, socialize and it'll be fine. But then, it clearly wasn't, because that's why we're back in the state we're in again.
No, I think the blame for students was misappropriated at the time, because obviously the spike happened and it just so happened to coincide with students going to uni, didn't it?
Yeah. But this is the thing. And then it's so I'm looking at it that, right, so I know we're getting ahead with the vaccines now, but obviously you'll all be aware there's the conversation of should we take this vaccine? Because people are misinformed as to how they've developed this one. Because obviously it's non-profit. They've decided they're going to do it non-profit, and they're going to speed up the testing process, which is why it's deemed safe. Now, it still means that, like, because they've said we've got a third of the population will have enough vaccines for a third of the population by the end of the year. Now that's only a third. See, it sounds a lot, but really it's not, is it? It's less than the majority, right? So how much longer will we have to wait before we go back to our normal lives? And how much are people actually, as bad as this might sound, how much are people willing to risk just going out and living as they were before? Because you can't, as social creatures, we can't be expected to stay away from each other for much longer. I don't think. And so
well, I think they're trying to really, in my head, realistically, we won't get back to any sort of normal until the vaccine is on its way out to people and people are having it and stuff like that. I personally think we're going to be in and out of lockdown for maybe another 6 months yet. You're not telling me at the end of Christmas, beginning of New Year, that we're not going to be in some sort of strict rules again, because some people, and I'm not talking for everybody out there, so I know some people are following the rules and all of that, but some people aren't. And those people, then we have to sacrifice January, February. I think realistically, you're looking at next summer. Really.
Well, I don't know if you know, but I was supposed to be on a theatre tour this year, which was due to start in March, and a lot of those dates were then rescheduled for early 2021, and some of those dates for early 2021 now are being pushed back even further. So the anticipation for future lockdowns and future strict guidelines and restrictions and all this are obviously there for everyone. Otherwise, it wouldn't be being postponed further.
It's interesting though, isn't it? So I think you've answered quite a few questions without me asking them, really. Do you think the government have been too strict on the entertainment business, especially when pubs, clubs, shops and gyms have been open? And do you agree with what they have done via the entertainment industry?
Well, it's comparatively speaking, isn't it? Comparatively speaking, yes. I mean, in terms of being sensible and safe, that question is a difficult one to answer, I think. But if you're going to compare the arts to every other industry, then definitely yes. The government have been far more strict, or perhaps apathetic. I don't know. Maybe they just left us alone because they're not interested in us. I don't know what it is, but there does seem to be some kind of apathy maybe towards the arts from the government.
Well, it's livelihood as well, isn't it? Like all of you three. Do you know, it's quite a theatrical show this evening. I think we've all been in shows. We've all been there. But for me, it hasn't been my livelihood. It was something that I did for a hobby, for fun. And I really enjoyed it. But Chris, I know your life is very much built on the entertainment industry. So It's been a real, explain to us a little bit, if you can, on how people have been suffering out there and how depressing it can really be.
Well, like you say, I think the problem is that because it is so much fun doing the job that we do, and for a lot of people, there are people who do it for hobbies, understandably so, it's often misconstrued as being something that is not a proper job or just a bit of fun, whereas actually it is a huge industry and a hugely important industry. And because that's not being recognised, we are in a real pickle. I mean, I'm in a fortunate position that I've been okay financially through lockdowns. Obviously, it has hit my bank balance not being able to go out on this tour, but I've been one of the luckier ones. I know that many theatres will probably never open their doors again because it's just been too long without any income.
Look at the drill hall in Lincoln.
I know, how sad.
Yeah.
That's gone. It's already gone. Leon, has it affected you as a student?
No, well, education wise it has, yeah. The stand now, I'm not going to mention which uni I go to, but so the lecturers are trying their best, right? And I will hold my hands up and say that, you know, if they do see this, they'll know me and they'll know I'm giving them props. But it depends on your subject, in my opinion. So I study literature, and obviously the clue's in the name. We rely on libraries, especially for a lot of textual sources. Now our uni's up in their game with online sources, but in the first lockdown, there was nothing. So it was just, you know, your library's closed. That's it. You can use what's online, and we'll open it up some journal articles that you'll be able to get, which was better than nothing. But like I said, we depend on a lot of the time books that, you know, are not online yet. They are, like I said, moving forward and trying to get them online. But it's a laborious process, isn't it? It's not, it can't be done overnight. There's millions of books out there. But it was the shortcut of going, especially because I was only a first year student last year, of going from being able to walk into the library, walk to the subject that you were looking at and studying, and pick books off the shelf, take them away, and go and do it. Now we can get back into the library, but you have to book a slot. You only get 45 minutes where you can go in and browse and borrow. You're meant to hand any books over that you pick up so they can quarantine them for 72 hours. So, and I'm like a normal student. I do everything last minute. So the others that are doing it last minute as well.
Can I just say that's Leon's opinion on a normal student, not Loose Linc. Leon's opinion.
Well, the ones that do it in advance are superpowered, I'll put it that way. So then, you know, obviously they can't access any materials I've touched after that. You can also do a click and collect service, but it takes 48 hours. So if you're in a Porsche, yeah, I know, don't. But if you're in a Porsche, you can't just, you know, say, I want this book, can I get it tomorrow? Because it might not be ready for you. Now, like I said, it depends on your subject, because some subjects like psychology, they rely on journal articles and use their online resources a lot heavier than we would studying literature. And that's not to say, obviously, that we don't, because we do look at online. But they can get by, in my opinion, just on the online resources, especially with how psychology is constantly evolving and constantly changing. So there's always new, isn't there? And I think because the uni I go to, the chancellor and vice chancellor are psychologists, maybe they've overlooked subjects, not on purpose, but it's happened. And there have been safety nets to reassure us of our grade. So they said, if we got a body of work from you that seemed lower than we would expect, we will fix it effectively. Because, you know, some people have not had internet access. They've not been able to drop in on lectures. They're things like Teams and Zoom and all sorts of other, platforms. But this time, they've said there will be no safety net. So you've just got to cope. And I mean, I'm fortunate, and it's going to sound silly, I'm fortunate that I'm having, up until now, been having 6 hours contact time a week. I know students that have been getting 0, and it's all been online. So they're not directly speaking, you know, on a because it's different. Doing it over the internet doesn't work the same as talking in person does. And I personally can't study all online. I really struggle with it.
No, I didn't. Join the club.
I'm a bit old-fashioned with it. I need to have a book in my hand, and I need to, you know, be able to discuss with my other students, you know, what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, I know this isn't on the subject. I was going to say in regards to entertainment, and he won't mind me talking about this, but my dad's a DJ, and has been a DJ since he was 17. And he's now in his 50s, and not a wedding DJ either. So like clubs and pubs and night stuff like that. And his view on it is that the industry in nightclubs and pubs might never recover from it.
No, never,
because obviously with his experience, he can effectively name his price for what he works for, because he's done so much. But like he said when pubs start opening again, who will want to hire somebody like that? Are they going to hire people that are willing to do it for £5 an hour, or just for the experience?
Well, that's what prices will have to be.
But then that knocks out the like you said about livelihood. It knocks it out straight away. It's gone. Like you said, and many in the theatre industry will sympathise. He went from earning enough money to pay his way in life and get by, to the next day waking up that he can't go to work. And now it's what, 7, 8 months on.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? But remember, you are the 5th panel member at home. So if you are in the entertainment industry, you've been struggling, or you've found a way to keep going through lockdown, please get in touch, let us know, and we'll share your stories, and polls will be answered next week, I promise you. Now, this is supposed to be like a mystery sort of thing, that we've got a guest, and you don't know who he is, but you do know who he is because he's a panellist. He's suddenly been thrown in the limelight. Welcome, Chris Clark, to the show. Can I just say, because it hasn't been said yet, Chris Clark created the Loose Linc credits that you see right at the beginning. It's all his own work. Believe me, that part at the end where you see me do that, I was stood in a freezing cold garden with a green screen behind me.
Sorry about that.
That's the only way we could do it. But so we will be putting Chris's details on our Facebook page. If you want business in that sort of way, he does a lot more as well. He's going to talk about what he does. We'll put his details on so you can get in touch with him if you want to do some work with him. But Chris, tell us a little bit why you're here this evening.
Well, as some of you may know, I've been involved in a very exciting Christmas-themed project, which the project was originally called Stay Safe Studios, and we are releasing a Christmas song with 25 plus local children called Christmas Bubble, and our little group that we've created to release this song's called Stay Safe.
Oh, so, right, question one, because I'm question one. So, what gave you this idea, Chris?
I've been involved with releasing music, and particularly I've done some Christmas stuff before. I do have a bit of a passion for Christmas songs. And B, I've worked in schools with children doing musical projects, video projects. But really, I think there was a real drive to do this particular project because of lockdown and then the restrictions after the first lockdown. I heard all these rumours about the nativity plays not going ahead, children not being allowed to even sing in groups in schools. And I just thought, what a shame at the end of a rubbish year for the children not to have that thing that I remember looking forward to when I was at primary school and secondary school even, doing the special Christmas performances. So I thought, well, maybe I could provide something for a few local children to do musically.
Thank you. Question 2.
Prompt. So when you were knocked down by COVID, what kept you going?
Yeah, so just to point out, I wasn't personally knocked down by COVID. But,
No. But like, obviously, you were affected by it like the rest of us. So
absolutely.
Obviously, you've got to find the way around that as an entertainer.
Yeah, sure. The second lockdown came at the worst time for this project because we'd put all the pre-planning in place. What the plan was to do was to spend the whole of November in a lovely studio in Sleaford called Street Star Live. Amazing place. They're really great there. We were going to do weekly sessions throughout November, different nights of the week for children, and there were going to be these socially distant sessions where we recorded the children, but they had time to rehearse and then come up with ideas for the music video and then make the music video. But of course, as you know, 5th of November was lockdown too. So we had a real struggle to think around the problem. Street Style Live were brilliant. They got the temperature checking thermometers and all the gear to make it safe, and we just ploughed into doing, I think it was 2 sessions with loads of different time slots for children to come and record their parts for the song, and record a tiny little bit of video while we had the time. But it was chaos, but wonderful chaos.
Okay, so what made you write this song, and can we buy it anywhere?
Well, you certainly can buy it from the 4th of December, which is exciting. It's going to be on official release from the 4th of December on all good download platforms. And we're going to run a TikTok competition. It's going to be available on there. So that'll be quite fun. But what made me write it? Well, as I said before, I do have a bit of a passion for Christmas songs. So I'm always up for the challenge of writing, hopefully, a half-decent Christmas song. But also, the theme of this song is very much a 2020 Christmas. It's called Christmas Bubble, and it's all about the struggles we face this year, but sort of facing the positivity and you know, that hope of the future sort of thing.
With the name Christmas Bubble that you brought up, was the inspiration for that like behind the bubbles that we're going into over the Christmas period?
It's interesting you should mention that, because obviously with a project like this, you have to plan things quite a bit in advance. And the name Christmas Bubble was put with the song in September time. So actually the government have nicked it off me.
Probably a couple
you
of
want
in there.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Good light. What's going on here? Let me take notes.
Go and get some royalties from Bojo.
Well, yeah, that would be nice. I think you should make it the nation's official Christmas song. I have actually written to him, just in.
Oh, well, that's really good. Listen, we're all going to stay quiet for a second because the single is going to be played to you now, so you can see what the single's all about. So here, take a look.
It's been a cold, cold year. Let's take that chill away. We've missed out on so much fun, but now we're ready for Christmas Day. Christmas Day. This Christmas time in a Christmas bubble. This Christmas time in a Christmas bubble. We'll do things right. To make you smile again. This Christmas time.
Wow, that was really, really good, and I'm looking forward to having it out. I will definitely be downloading it. Also, the link to the song will be put on our Facebook page, and also the link to buy it and download it will be put there as well. So please get behind it and get supporting your local Lincolnshire song. Thank you very much, Chris, for coming on this evening, but please stay on as we carry on talking.
Don't go anywhere.
But we go on to our final subject this evening, and it's a town that we've never spoken about before. Good evening, Market Deeping. We've never spoken about you this evening, and it's about the council rejects a new war memorial in the main square of Market Deeping. It would have been a polished grey granite in the shape of a Celtic cross, but no names would have been inscribed. Planning Permission refused this, so this got us talking. Do you think this whole story, by the way, the panel are given the story before the show, so they would have read it. Do you think this whole story is just a little bit disrespectful?
I don't.
You don't?
No. The rejection itself isn't based on the fact that it's a war memorial. It's based on where they wanted it. And unfortunately, it surrounds an area of listed buildings. And the damage done to the listed buildings would have outweighed the need for the war memorial. They've not rejected the idea of a war memorial, more just the area in which it's in. So I don't think it's a matter of disrespect. I just think it's the wrong place.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mike, and I think we have to be mindful when it comes to media that they often have a way of spinning things to seem like it's a council trying to be disrespectful, but when you read into it, it's just not. They either want you to change the appearance of it or change its location, and they're saying, it's because I'm sure it said there'll be a referendum on it. So they're not even just saying, no, it's not happening.
It's going to happen or not. I'm a bit on the fence about it, really. I just think if we were in a different generation and we had gone through it and we had witnessed and our lives would have been affected by it, do you think we might have a bit of a difference of an opinion of what we're saying now?
No. I think what they're trying to do is preserve the history that's already there. So rather than potentially destroying what's there to create something new to memorialize. There we go. Memorialize. That's the word I'm looking for. Something. They're preserving the history that's there. They've not said at any point that the memorial can't go up somewhere else in the town where there's less history. Not that you have less history with a town, just somewhere where it's going to cause less damage.
I would point out as well that it's not a new theme of people questioning the placement and appearance of war memorials. When they first started popping up after the First and Second World Wars, that there was in places opposition to where they were placing them. So again, not opposition to the idea of a memorial, but how it's presented and where it's presented. And because there were people threatening to, I say threatening like it's it's not, but trying to put them on in the middle of village greens or on places where people had recreational areas. They were saying, well, no, we use that area quite a lot and it has a purpose, but let's have a memorial here instead. Yeah,
I think it's a matter of outweighing the usefulness of having it there. So if something's in regular use or it's going to be caused damage to people that are already using that area, just move it up the road. It still means exactly the same thing. We still recognize that these people served their country, died for their country. The placement isn't the be all and end all of it.
Yeah, it's not a snub at all.
Common
sense, isn't it? As you're saying, it doesn't feel like a snub by any means. It just feels like common sense at the end of the day. I mean, I must admit, I hadn't read the story because I'm a last-minute panelist. But from what you've just said, it feels very it's a very black and white issue by the looks of it.
Yeah, I think all they need to do is put it back to the council again and have it in a different area, further up the road, maybe where it's not surrounded by listed buildings.
But what about names not being on it? I don't completely agree with that. I don't. But the whole point of what's the point of just putting a Celtic cross up?
No, I would
represent anything.
Go down more in a way of a metaphorical meaning behind that, because you could argue that when a memorial has got names on it, it's for those that are named. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas
you are right.
It is, and there'll be people that disagree, but then if you have a memorial and it simply says something like "to all that have served," or to all that do continue to serve, do you know what I mean? To go along those lines, it becomes Unitarian, doesn't it? It's for everybody. It also means it's non-applicable to even a particular nation involved in a war. So there's no bickering over if one part of society get their name on and the other part doesn't. It makes it unifying, I think.
Leon, can I say congratulations, because you're the first panelist that's made me change my mind on the subject. That's the first time it's happened. That's the first time I've gone, oh yeah, actually, I agree with that.
Yeah, but it's not in a matter that makes any physical difference, does it? It's only metaphorical. So.
I will pick up on it, like you say. It doesn't just recognise then the people that are from a specific country. It also doesn't specify a certain war. We all recognise war memorials to get back to World War One and World War Two, but we need to recognise that there's been several other wars since then. So for that to stand there, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's covering the people who served and died for World War One or World War Two. It's just for those people that were brave enough to stand and serve our country and die by the sword, effectively.
But going on that, let me pick up on that point, Mike. Actually, that leads me on to question 2 almost. In that, do you think, as a nation, where, because I'm a 90s baby, and I've always said that at school and stuff like that, I've really struggled, but this is only me, I've really struggled to try and picture World War One and try and picture, it's almost like my grandparents telling me a made-up story on their knee, because I can't picture that in my head. But do you think that for maybe my generation or younger, Leon, you're in the same generation, is that do you think we're trying to erase the past almost, and we're trying, because really we have one day a year where we think about it, and that's Poppy Day, where everybody thinks about the past and stuff like that, where actually for some people this was their everyday life, morning to night. And actually, are we not being the most respectful that we can be?
Do you know what? I quite find this subject interesting because I've just finished reading War Horse by Michael Morpurgo, which is set in World War One from the perspective of a horse. You've probably seen the stage play. And obviously
Harry Potter's in it.
Is what?
Harry Potter's in it. War Horse.
In the stage play?
Oh, no, he isn't. That's another. No, ignore me. Ignore. There are other actors available. There are other actors available.
But, so, and I tried to use this with my own daughter because, right, so you only learn what you learn about the wars nowadays from school, because we've changed how we behave as a society. We have constant entertainment from the internet, so there's no need for parents to tell us stories anymore. As sad as that might be, that's just the way the world has gone. But when schools try and get kids to read certain books like War Horse, which is because it's told from the perspective of an animal, a child, in my opinion, is more able to try and envisage what's going on. And just how horrible the events of World War One were. So I would agree with you that we have to some extent forgotten about it, and it is very far removed, but that can be changed. You know, if you, and in some people there is this, like, there are people now saying that we shouldn't study war and things like that, which, you know, if you have that opinion, that's your opinion, and you're entitled to
But
be wrong
isn't it
about
a choice in education now? Yeah,
Say that again, sorry.
I might be wrong. You'll know better more than me, Leon. But in that a choice that you can either learn about the war or you don't have to learn about the war.
I don't think it is. It's only, I
Is
think.
it not?
So I know there are certain subjects that your parents can have you removed from, like religious education.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons, but so it's only up until you take GCSEs. If you choose not to take history at GCSE level, your education would probably come to a halt when it comes to war.
Yeah.
But the curriculum
Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
is the way it is, and I know it's written by British politicians who you know probably get behind the idea of looking at war. They might look at it in the wrong way, and they do with a lot of subjects, but they still make you study it to some extent.
You say, I mean, even going up to GCSE, you do cover some basic history of war because, again, it's an invention by man, and it's happened throughout the ages. You know, I know I covered things like the Battle of Hastings and the like up until
nobody ever forgets that number.
But I think that unfortunately it is something that people nowadays are forgetting is a real thing that happened, which is why it's more important that things are more recently that have happened are taught to kids, and things like visits to places like Auschwitz and whatnot are made available to kids at school level, because it gives them an appreciation at an early age to understand what they would have gone through. Because let's not forget, people were drafted from the age of, I believe it was 15, if not 16, to find this one. They snuck in at, at 15.
I can't remember what it's called. So if one of you can say this is what it's called, it'd be amazing. But I remember going as a kid, and what really brought it alive for me is I can't remember the name of the place, but it was huts. And you went in. Say again.
Is it Eden Camp?
Yes, and you went in and you smelt like what they were smelling, and that really brought it alive for me. I was like, right, okay, I know how they were living now. Okay, it's not 100% realistic, but as a young kid, going through the huts and seeing and the noises and the bangs, and it really, really brought it alive.
Have you ever been to the Museum of Lincolnshire Life?
Yes.
So they have a similar scenario, don't they? When you go through the Lincolnshire Regiments bit.
Oh, I don't know.
The walk. I think it's the walkway to where they have all the historic vehicles, but it's a trench. So you walk through. It's meant to be like a trench, and there's bodies and stuff hanging over you, and there's gunfire in the background, isn't there? And flashing lights and things. It's only a small section, but they've tried to demonstrate, you know, what was going on, because they have a particular link with the Lincolnshire Regiment. Yeah. So
right, put you all on the spot a little bit for the last question. Chris, tell me your age.
My age?
Yeah.
39.
Right. Mike, tell me your age.
Oh, should never ask a bearded man his age. I'm 32.
And you're the same age as me, aren't you, Leon? 30.
Maybe I'm 30.
30. So my last question is, and I really need you to think forward. So think forward like now 20 years. And I know that's not easy, but think forward 20 years. A lot of the older generation say that they feel invisible. Do you agree with this?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
In regards to what? Just everyday life.
Just they start to feel like their opinion and their voice and their if they complain to somebody.
I would say that if you look at for instance, things like entertainment and the media, from when I was a child, for instance, just your average week on television was very much
66, Chris.
It was about then, yeah. In the 80s, darling, in the 80s. It was very much a variety type thing. You know, you had programs that catered for all ages quite equally, whereas I think TV and the internet and streaming is very much geared to the Instagram generation more so now. And advertising is very much aimed at young people. So I can see that, you know, in that sense, older people are being overlooked because I think they're probably not in the demographic of, you know, who's being sold to the most and who's buying the most. So that's probably one reason, but there are obviously many other reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Chris. You know, all the social media platforms are pushed ideally towards the youth of today and whatnot, and people from, I'm going to say, our age and below, you know, 45 and below. But then at the same time, there has to be a willingness from people over a certain age to sort of learn and adapt as well. I know my nan's done it, and a few older people of my family, they've all learned how to use WhatsApp, FaceTime, just so they can keep in touch, like with family during this lockdown. And through it, they've learned how to extend their reach to certain things. Like it's not a big thing, but they've learned how to use like things like Netflix and Disney Plus. But to them, that's massive to have access to that kind of library of film, TV, and even access to books through like things like Audible with Amazon Prime.
Do you know what though? I agree with what both of you are saying, absolutely. But I agree as well, Mike, with what you're saying about adapting. So my mother-in-law's 71, and she's better at some stuff computer-wise than I am for her own teachings, and that's not even playing it up. Yeah. She's made it her business as things have developed, because she's still working now, that she's adapted how she is so she can work with it. But then I know people that are younger than her that refuse to learn how to use technology just because they don't want to. And then you think, well, yeah, okay, so if you are getting ignored, but somebody's offering you a gateway to get involved with what's happening, yes, it's not fair to just brush them aside. But if you're not going to get involved, you're going to get forgotten about, aren't you? As sad as that might sound.
It comes back to that question that I said a couple of weeks ago on Loose Links, and it's still true today, and it mind blows me, and there's just no answer to it. But younger generation and older generation, it's like that all the time. Nobody wants to. Older generation are saying, well, and I hate the saying, I have said it many a times and I will never say it when I'm in my 50s, when I go, well, in my day, because I don't, as soon as somebody says that, I just want to say, well, we're not in that day anymore. Today, we're in the year of 2020. I
use that phrase now. Back in my day, in the early 90s, late 80s.
But we're not in that day anymore, mate. We're not there anymore.
Some of us weren't even ideas then.
No.
I don't know. Tell us what you guys think, though. Talk to us about, do you think older generation, are you an older generation out there that you are feeling forgotten about? Do you think you're in a world where you're just forgotten and not thought about anymore? Also, talk to us about being forgotten, and do you find the memorial thing a bit disrespectful, or are you agreeing with the panel on what they're saying? Remember, your opinion is just as important as ours. Do you know, tonight, before I pressed record, before I say goodnight and see you all soon, before I pressed record, I thought, and this is me being very, very sexist, I will hold my hands up, but I thought, oh my word, I've got a panel of men. Am I just going to have like a silence, awkward treatment all the way? You talk more than the women do.
I've never been accused of being a manly man.
I know
me either, Chris, really, me either.
I know me and Mike
but thanks to my panel for this evening. It's been absolutely fantastic. All three of you have been amazing, and I can't wait to have you back on. Will you please thank Chris Clark, Mike Kelly, and Leon Viva. Join us next week for a whole lot more talk, and maybe, just maybe, a woman on the panel. See you next week.